Hi guys, welcome back to the UpAllKnight Book Club podcast. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Jacob. I'm glad to be back with everyone for another episode.
Welcome back.
Yes, and we're glad to have you.
All right, today we're going to be talking about ebooks versus physical books.
Let's just open it up with a question right now. Like, which do you guys prefer, ebooks or physical books?
Okay, I'll answer it first. For me, I don't have a preference. For me, the preference depends on the setting. Like for me, like ebooks have their place and physical books have their place. And I have disadvantages and advantages for each and a love for each. But there's no way I lean completely, but they both have their role in my library.
And I love both too. Like, there's just nothing like opening up a book, smelling the pages, but there's also like just reading at night with my Kindle is just like it's a different experience. I love it so much. Just that e-ink screen is just so good, so nice on the eyes. I probably lean more ebook like overall.
I know for me, I'm kind of like both of you guys, where it's like I lean both ways. I definitely prefer the convenience of ebooks, but the satisfaction of finishing a physical novel for me will beat out an ebook hands down.
Well, I will agree with you there. Like specifically, like even though on ebooks, like they can tell you your progress, there's nothing like quite like for me, like with a physical book of being able to like see your progress, see like how far you've read, see like by looking at like the spine of the book and like just there's nothing quite like that for me either. So even though like you can see progress on both, I do prefer it, the satisfaction you get when you finish like a physical copy of a book.
And I'm actually the opposite. I like seeing the numbers. I'm a numbers guy. So like if I'm reading a physical book, I'll actually go to Goodreads and put in my number at the end of the night, like what page I'm on, to see what percentage of the book I'm through. And I love seeing that bar on the bottom of the like reading Kindle, you know, how much time you have left in the book. So I know whether or not I have time to read another chapter, how much time, you know.
I hate the time. It makes me like I feel like it's like a bet. It's like, oh, you think you're reading fast? I bet you can't finish this in an hour. I'm like, well, now I've got to.
No, and it does add some pressure, but like I found it because it learns your reading speed. At least it does it pretty accurately on the Kindle Oasis. Because like I've had that thought in the back of my head, like, is it like how does it know my actual reading speed? Because it's just kind of throwing like a ball in the air and guessing. But I actually timed it one time and it's pretty accurate and it's helped me because I'm one of those that is like an hour before bed. Okay, I want to read this many chapters. And I can actually see like, okay, I have one more chapter to go, 15 minutes. It's usually pretty accurate. So I can definitely see why I would feel like added pressure, but I found it to be like one of the advantages of ebooks actually after using them for a while.
I don't know. I'm just I'm a very competitive person, I've discovered. And I don't know. I'm just like, I've got to beat it now. But I also read on my phone, not in like an actual e-reader. I use the Kindle app. Like that's when I think of e-reading, I think of reading on my phone with the Kindle app or like the Overdrive app from the library. And so I don't know if maybe that affects like the time limit or whatever. But I've never timed it. That'd be interesting to do.
There's so many different ways to read ebooks, like on your laptop or on your phone, on an iPad or on a Kindle.
There is, and for me, like when I speak to ebooks, though, I'm referring to like an e-reader because like this is where like most of those like advantages come into play for me because it just experience overall is very different, like from a Kindle, like Paperwhite, Baseline, or Oasis versus an iPad because of the type of the screens, like the e-ink screen, being able to like, and you can adjust brightness on both, but it's just like the eye strain you get from on an iPad, laptop versus an actual e-reader with an e-ink screen is pretty different for me.
Yeah, not all e-ink screens are equal because I had the Baseline Kindle and that e-ink screen wasn't as good as the Paperwhite I have now. Just even to the touch, just touching the screen feels so much better on the Paperwhite.
Well, and especially from like a resolution standpoint too, because I had that similar experience. Like I had an old kind of, I think it was a Kindle Voyage or one of like the early like Baseline Kindles. And just like the resolution from that to like an Oasis, it makes a big difference. So yeah, no, they're not all created equally for sure.
Yeah, the baseline Kindle is 167 pixels per square inch, and the Oasis and the Paperwhite is 300. So that's a pretty big jump there, and I didn't think I noticed a difference, if I'm being honest, because I still thought like the baseline Kindle, I thought it looked good. I read the first Harry Potter book on that, and I was fine. But then I got this Paperwhite, and I'm never going back.
No, yeah, it's no, and that's definitely it's a big difference. And you can't really, I know for me, like I'm not read up on like screen resolutions and the major differences, but when you pick up one and then the other, especially after spending a lot of time with like a baseline Kindle and then going to like something higher res, you notice it definitely.
All right, could you guys like talk a bit more about like what you're talking about when you say, what is it, ink screen?
Oh yeah,
that you-
e-ink.
E-ink, yeah.
Yeah, so basically the way your phone works is there's like the lighting is behind the screen, and you have the light come forward into the screen. That's where you get like the images that pop up on your phone. E-ink, actually, I'm not entirely sure how it works a little bit differently, but it's only black and white. Um, and I think it's magnetic. I don't know. Actually, that's something to look up real quick.
I don't either. And I think to my understanding, like it almost reflects light versus I know the newer ones have like a backlight too that you can see in the dark. Like some of like the original ones I know used to like kind of reflect light, like almost like if you were reading like a book that like it's reflected light versus like a backlight. But I don't know like the actual technicalities behind it either.
According to Google, um, it's kind of what you said, where like the lighting comes in at a different space, and its goal is to lower power consumption and increase the contrast of the screen to make reading easier.
Yeah, I like having the front light better on the Kindle. I was actually about to say that before you asked to explain the ink. Um, the Kindle, like the lights are in front of the screen,
Yeah.
so the lights projected back, so you're not having that light coming at your eyes like you are on a phone or a TV or a computer. It's being redirected by a different angle, but that makes the different reading experience from reading on your phone. Like when you said
Yeah.
you read on your phone.
That's the biggest difference for me. And I think it varies from person to person. I think a lot of people have this experience, and I know I did as well, but it's with the LCD screens like on a phone or a laptop, an iPad. When you're reading books that way, I get a lot of eye strain and a lot more like fatigue reading versus within like an e-reader, especially like the new ones, like they have like the yellow lighting to almost mimic more like a book page, and I don't notice like any of the eye fatigue. I don't notice any of the eye strain. Plus, you get the advantage of being able to read in the dark, which that's pretty big, like before bed for me, because it's versus like a phone with the screen with the blue light, it'll keep me up. But with a Kindle, it doesn't have that same effect because of like the e-ink screen and what it is. So that's like the major difference I've noticed with between the two. Because I spent a lot of time reading Kindle on the Kindle app on my phone as well. But it's mostly in daytime and kind of like forced scenarios where I have to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like the big draw for e-readers for me is a way to like decrease my social media time. So like, for example, I went to the hairdressers yesterday and I had like a half-hour wait before I went in. And normally what I would do is I'd like go on Instagram or go on TikTok because we're all addicted. But instead I opened up my Kindle e-reader and started reading like some random book I just got from the library. Um, and needing like an e-reader specifically in order to receive the benefits, like I don't know, it kind of takes away some of the convenience. Like part of it is that you only need one device, and you can do it all. And needing another one just kind of, I don't know, it's just more money that I have to spend. And like I think you mentioned, or I don't think you haven't mentioned, like how much like is an e-reader, like just a base Kindle e-reader? Because I know you guys are talking about like the upgraded versions.
Yeah, just the basic Kindle runs you at $89 before tax.
And funnily enough, I went book shopping for the first time with a friend. And for $89, I got like 12 books at Barnes and Noble. I mean, I'm gonna get the 12 books over the e-reader every time, even though the e-reader may be the better investment.
Well, and we can get into it, the different ways like you can eventually save. I've experienced even more with like an e-reader and Kindle versus going to a bookstore and buying physical copies. Though I understand that's an experience in of itself that is taken away by just loading books onto your Kindle or buying, with the thing with the Kindle set with the Kindle is there's a lot of sales.
Mhm.
I know I think Amazon in particular has a program that they run like where you pay like a monthly subscription and you get like so many books a month as
Kindle
well.
Unlimited, yes.
So there's definitely ways I've found that I've made my money back and more. I've saved a lot, even though there's like kind of that entry price where you have to pay, okay, say $90 for a Kindle. Like in time, if you do get use out of it, which that's kind of the big thing, if you're so tied to physical books where you still find yourself gravitating towards that over a Kindle, then yeah, it's probably not a great idea from a cost perspective. But what I've found, I've gotten a lot of use out of my Kindle, and when I've utilized the deals and loading books onto it, and I've saved a lot of money actually in the process doing it that way.
I know another big draw is just like how small an e-reader is. I'm currently in a dorm, and like I said, I just went on that big book spending haul, and now I've got 12 new books, and I have nowhere to put them. They're like sitting at the edge of my bed. And as someone who was raised like very much, books are sacred objects that you get on special occasions and should take care of. It kind of hurts me a little. Like I don't have space to like protect them and keep them in a safe place. Versus an e-reader, like you don't have to worry about it. It's just on a tablet, kind of.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because my number one advantage that I wrote down for a Kindle is portability, like 100%. I mean, I have over 400 books on my Kindle and I have them all organized in different sections and it's literally all in like the palm of my hand.
Mhm.
Especially for someone like I think even in your scenario, but for me, like I'm someone that has not so much in obviously with COVID, but I'm a big traveler. So like having the like being afforded the ability to kind of bring my entire library of books in my backpack and like the size of like a Kindle, like something I can just hold in my hand, that's huge because I could never lug around books like on a trip really anywhere.
Yeah, I'm going on like a plane for like the first time in my life this summer. Um, and that's something like I'm actually struggling with because I don't like I want to read. This is going to be a vacation. I want to have books to read, but there are like weight limits on planes.
Yes.
What's with that? And so I can't do my normal like MO of just like packing 2 shirts and then packing the rest with books.
Absolutely. And like especially when you think about like for me when I've been in places like I because there's the weight limits and if you're just under the weight limit and then you buy 3 to 4 books on your trip when you're over there and then try to factor it back into the weight of the backpack, that's a problem too. So it's definitely like versus if I want to read a specific book when I'm overseas somewhere or in another state somewhere, etc., I can just go to the Kindle store, buy it, and I have it right there. Just all I need is internet connectivity to do it. So that's, I mean, for me, like from a portability standpoint, that's everything for me. That's like the number one advantage. Jonathan, I don't know if you've had the same kind of experience with it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I this thing is always in my bag everywhere I go. It's either my backpack or my work bag. I'm always taking it with me. Super convenient. Um, don't have to lug around like a hardcover book because when I do get books, I like hardcover books. Those things are, a little bit larger, a little bit heavier, a little bit heavy duty.
Bringing up the like topic of like physical books, when people were talking, I have an Instagram poll uh, from our Up All Night Book Club Instagram if you want to follow us there, and I saw that when it comes to people reading actual physical books, most of them prefer paperback over hardback. I'm presuming because of the portability of them versus hardback.
The reading experience for me with a like as far as physical books go, paperbacks are by far my preference. But I also have like the collector side of me from like an aesthetic point of view, you can't really beat a hardback.
Yeah.
Like, so if I'm getting a hardback though, it's pretty much for display, even though my display at school looks just horrible right now because I don't have enough room for anything either. But yeah, so for me, like that's kind of the thing with hardbacks is display purposes, check. But for reading purposes, they're not as comfortable in the hand. And like I'm like cringing as I'm like trying to like hold them and read it because I'm worrying that like I'm gonna mess up the book itself. Because it's obviously more of a money investment than a paperback version is. So
Oh my gosh, you want to talk about the cost of physical like books? I'm gonna bring up my like big spending spree again. $90, a solid 30% of it was just one book, one hardback book,
easily.
which is ridiculous. Like if it wasn't like a book I'd been waiting for months and had like saved solely to buy, I think I just would have said no and been absolutely not. Like I don't even spend that much on my groceries.
Yeah, I know. And then the problem is like if it's one of my favorite books, then every 3 to 4 years they're putting out different variants of the hardcover itself too. And then I want to go buy the new variant too. So like then like just the money you end up sinking into it, which I understand that not everyone is crazy like that. But for me, I am, like, especially my favorite books. I think of like some Stephen King books in particular, like one of his most famous books, The Stand. Like Barnes and Noble puts out like a variant of it like every like 3 to 4 years. And I feel obliged to go and get it. But yeah, no, they're definitely a money investment.
The Barnes and Noble collectible editions are so beautiful on my shelf.
Oh
They're
my
awesome.
gosh. I got a copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray in that same little spree. And it is the most beautiful book I think I've ever bought. And it's like a Barnes & Noble collector edition. And that transitions well into another point about physical versus ebooks. With physical books, you get kind of a beautiful piece of art that you can show off to people along with the book. That's why they're so expensive. You're paying for a piece of art. You're paying for a cover design. Lots of times on the actual covers, there's engravings. I mean, we're all big fantasy readers. Those scalloped pages hit different. I like those things.
They really do.
I agree with you, but I will say that as far as physical books go, what you're speaking to more, I think, is hardcover, because I found for me with my paperbacks, even when I'm trying to take like extreme care with it, man, they get damaged pretty easily. And especially like that back spine on a lot of the books, a lot of the paperbacks can start peeling and they wear with age. They don't age particularly well. So again, I think like for me, like if it's a book that's a piece of art that you're going to be able to hold forever, that's going to hold like that same look, that's kind of like a hardcover. I don't find that the paperbacks, at least in my experience, last as long.
What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I don't like it when the books start wearing. Like I get like keep in mind in nice like collector's editions, like when the paperbacks get that like the lines on them, that bugs me. But I know a lot of people like it. Like my girlfriend, she loves it. Like one of her favorite books is like all
I was
torn
gonna
up.
say, I don't know, maybe
Like
I'm just like a super sentimental person, but I love paperbacks that are like beat up. I will go through garage sales and specifically buy like, okay, what's the most beaten up book? Because that's like a sign it's a good book. And on my own bookshelf, like I was cleaning it the other day and I was like, wow, I remember when I got this page torn. I remember why, and like seeing the spines all creased and bent, especially on like my childhood favorites, like covers are gone. And I just love like that. We're going to get real poetic here, but like that physical demonstration of love for something. And I'm definitely careful with my books. I was raised that this is like a special thing. You don't want to like treat it badly. But it is just something that happens when you read something a bunch of times, especially when it is a paperback. And that's something that you kind of miss on an e-reader. I guess you get like finger smudges on the screen. But like if you read a lot of books, you don't have that like, you don't see that, if that makes sense.
Well, and I agree with you. And I guess what I was speaking to is more of just like if I'm thinking of display on a bookshelf,
Yeah.
like that's what I like from a hardcover. But speaking to the experience you're talking about, I actually like one of my favorite things is like when I go to a used bookstore and I buy a book. And I just had this experience. I bought a book from one of the bookstores around me at UCF, and I got the book, and like inside the book, there was like a little note that was left. Like I think it was like a mother that had like wrote their daughter something, but like she was basically like speaking towards like, oh, this book changed my life in college. Like I skipped like classes for an entire week to sit there and read or whatever. So I wanted to give it to you, and I hope you have the same experience. It was something like that. But like that's one of my like favorite experiences in general, is like books that are lived in. Like whether it's like little notes or it's tabs sometimes, like I just, you don't get that with an e-reader. That's very true. And I do think that's an advantage of this physical book, specifically if you're like going to use bookstores and getting ones that are lived
Yes.
in, or if you're just wearing them out yourself, and like you're saying, like you remember like little page tears or dog ears that remind you of like when you first read it initially.
And talking about the notes, um, I highlight the heck out of my Kindle books. And since we've started this podcast, I've started actually making notes to try to like understand it better. But when I read the physical book, I don't like making notes or highlights or anything on the actual book. My textbooks are different. Like if you look at my textbooks, they're all marked up. I got writings on all of the equations in the corners, a little bit of math there. Um, but no, not my like literature books. I can't mark in those. I don't know. I can't bring myself to do it. On my Kindle, I like the crap out of it. I even color code it because like in the app you can color code.
Well, one of the best parts about it too is, it's like when you're in that Kindle ecosystem and you have the Kindle app on your phone, on your laptop, like when you're reading it on an e-reader and you're like making highlights, you can even make notes obviously on it too and type things in as you're reading. It uploads to the Kindle app itself. So you can go on your phone and check highlights and notes you made. And it's like it all combines that way. And I think that's like one of the best parts about it. Obviously, if you're just making highlights on a physical book, it's not going to all group together like that. And like you can't get it on your phone. See?
It also uploads to Goodreads, so you can share it with your friends if you do it to the Kindle. But you can't manually upload highlights from physical books.
I actually didn't even know about the Goodreads tidbit. That's really
Yeah,
interesting. I've never utilized that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's actually like a con for me.
really.
I don't know.
Well,
I just
you can hide them. It doesn't have to be public. You can
Oh,
choose
you can
what.
hide them? Okay.
Most of mine are hidden. Like I think only like 2 books. I think I made some of my highlights, and you can do specific highlights too. So like some of them for the Midnight Library, I made them public.
Well, and the interesting thing is the ones that are public, like it shows like the most liked ones. So like you can see like what a lot of people are highlighting, and like just like what spoke to like different people. I always find that cool to kind of look through sometimes just to see like how it differentiates from the ones that I highlighted too. That's like a cool kind of experience, like this whole like ecosystem that's created within it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I like the fact that like if I guess I don't like how easy it is to go on Kindle. Again, like I think I'm just very sentimental. But I like the fact that if you love a sentence in a book, you have to go find a pen. You have to go get a notebook. You have to write it out. And that just like kind of shows like how powerful that line is. But again, that's me being nitpicky and being very romantic and sentimental. So I definitely like see why it is beneficial, especially for textbooks. Like I have all my textbooks are e-readers, specifically because it's so easy to take notes and keep them grouped. On Kindle especially, you can do this thing where like you can specifically search the colored highlights, which is fantastic because you can color code and then be like, okay, I only want the blue highlights or the red highlights and things like that.
No, and I don't think you're being nitpicky. I think it's like you're saying, it's just a personal preference. Like that, this is what you've grown up doing. Like this is what you're so accustomed to. And I think I was the same way before I really started using e-readers. But for me, I think just once I did, just how much easier it is for me to do those things, and then to have all my highlights like on my phone as well that I've like uploaded in my notes. I just find it to be like the more streamlined experience. But I get the nostalgia too that factors into everything.
I think it's like aligned in my head. I don't know about like you, Jonathan, or you, Jacob, but for me, reading is like my self-care. I read like after a really long day. I read right when I wake up as like a good way to start my day. I read when I'm stressed or really sad or even sometimes like super duper happy. Like it is how I cope with a lot of things. And so making it like this really personal experience with something physical and then going and making physical notes. When like all the books that have most affected me have been physical because of that, I think. And it just like because it's an act of self-care, making it that much more of an effort to make things matter. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right.
You are. Yeah, I know. It's because it's a form of escapism for me too. Like I think that's how it's self-care in
Mhm.
that way. Is like when I'm reading a book and I'm experiencing a book, like it's kind of like all I'm doing. Like I'm putting myself in that world. think that's I think a lot of people have that experience just with reading in general. That's why like I've noticed like I think just with COVID and everything that was going on, reading gained so much popularity again,
Yeah.
just because it's something you can just immerse yourself in and kind of just escape into a different world.
I feel like this would be a good way to transition into how COVID has affected like e-reading versus physical reading for all of us. Like I know for me, I had never like read ebooks really. I had a Kindle or like a Nook my freshman year of high school. I had Kindle Unlimited. I read it like that's all I did freshman year. And then after that, I kind of like exhausted the books I wanted to read there and it died and I never picked it up again. I never saw a need to replace it. But then with COVID, the library shut down. And the only way I could get my books was through e-readers. And I was kind of forced to adapt to like ebooks and some like, I mean, I don't hate them. I feel like I've been like hitting on them a bit. They are very useful. And I've kind of, because of COVID, been forced to adapt and like them in some way. So would you guys say like COVID has like shifted your opinions at all?
Well, I've been using like I- I've been using Overdrive and Libby for like years, like since before Libby was a thing. So when COVID hit, I definitely like checked out more ebooks, but I also got annoyed because the waits got longer
Oh my gosh, they're so
for
long.
books. There are still some books with like 3 month waits. It's like, are you kidding me? Like 12 weeks? Really? So I'm still waiting for some of them.
And I don't know if it's changed my personal opinion, but I think it probably definitely changed opinions in general. I don't know like the actual statistics, like whether e-reading like skyrocketed during this time, but I think I would imagine it probably did because just outside of like libraries shutting down, I know for a fact there was a lot of like local used bookstores that shut down during COVID as well. There's a really popular one I know by the UCF area that's still not open. I think a lot of people had that experience as well. So yeah, I think it probably, I would imagine it changed opinions. And I'd say that's one of the advantages of it. I know like something else that gained a lot of popularity is like people just like going to Amazon and buying physical books that way. So I think that was the shift as well. But yeah, in general,
I think Amazon sold out of their Kindles
really.
during the pandemic. I think like even the Oasis sold out.
And I don't know if that speaks to like just I know there's been so many problems like with manufacturing and like the supply chain that way, or it's just with the popularity of e-readers. But that's interesting nonetheless. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I think like the two big things they ran out of was like podcast microphones and Kindles. So
Yeah, that's funny. No, there are like 5 million podcasts now, I
we're
guess.
the best
Everyone
though.
has
We're the
started one.
best.
That's true. That's true. I would have to agree.
And so going back a little bit, like for the searching, like it's so great that you can just search through an ebook
Yes.
for like a keyword if you're like using a textbook. Like I still prefer physical books, but that's because like mine are really technical. I like to look at the equations. Um, but using that search function for like other things is just great. And the the Kindle also has like X-ray. I don't know if you guys know about that.
It's
The X-ray
glorious
feature.
for textbooks.
I don't think I'm familiar. What is it? The X-ray?
Oh, X-ray?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like so you like I don't know if you can get it on the phone. I don't think I've seen that option on the phone. Like it's on my Kindle e-reader for sure. So like if you open up a book you're reading, like I'm reading Prelude to Foundation by Asimov, however you pronounce his name. If you like tap the three dots there in the top corner on the book, you can go to the X-ray. It has like notable clips. It has like people, and it doesn't cover from ahead of where you've read.
Oh, that's
So you can
cool.
only go back and see notable like sections. So there's no spoilers. You can go back and see like quotes from like different chapters. So if you need a refresher, you can skip through that real quick. It has like a glossary of people, different terms that might pop up if you need like um, flashcards or something for a textbook, and any images that might be in the book like maps or postcards or whatnot. It's pretty cool to have all that organized and like right there at your
Oh,
fingertips.
that's awesome. And yeah, I'm not too familiar with that feature, but oh man, the search function, I can't even tell you like how many times that has come like clutch, especially like as an English like literature major versus like if I'm doing like kind of like deep analysis of like whether it's a short story or a novel or like a specific character within a novel, like being able to look up like certain words that refer to like a specific theme maybe, or like if I'm doing like a character analysis, like being able to like search that character's name and seeing all the different times that they showed up and being able to like click on that and see like a scene, that's been like a huge advantage for me. I understand with a physical book that like you could do that, but obviously it's just not as like streamlined
Not as
because
convenient at
you're gonna have
all.
to be flipping through. Yeah, you're gonna be flipping through pages, and it's just I'd say like that's the search function major advantage for e-reader
I
in my
definitely
opinion.
will like agree with you there. For the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, that was like the first book I really like. What's the word? Annotated. I really annotated that book.
Mm,
And it was so frustrating at times because like I had to have my tabs, I had to have my different highlighters, I had to have a pen and all these things. Like before, whenever I'd annotated a book, I just used whatever I had on hand, like different colored pens, whatever, it didn't matter. But for this one, like I wanted it to look nice. And I found that very frustrating. And I can see how that would be a big advantage of an e-reader. That you don't need all those utensils. It's already like built in to the e-reader.
Yeah, especially like on the phone where you have different colored highlights, so that could act like has like your different tabs or whatnot.
yeah, and I will say because I haven't done too much well obviously because on a Kindle like that's one of the disadvantages. There are certain e-readers that can display color. I'm aware of. I don't know which ones in particular, but like as far as like a lot of the baseline Kindle ones, even the Kindle Oasis, the highest model, they don't like display color. So I know for me, the major instances that I noticed that is like, so like when you have your library of books displayed on your Kindle, like it'll show the covers and the covers are black and white. And it's kind of just like a nitpicky OCD thing for me, but I would love for it to be colored. And I know another instance where you may notice that if you're like a manga or a comic book reader, obviously like it wouldn't be colored then either. So for like those specific genres, I'd say like physical still has like a major advantage, unless you're reading it on your phone. But obviously that's different than an e-reader. But yeah, I'd say like that's the main times I notice it for sure.
Yeah, I use my tablet to read comics. I use Comixology, like the app, because I've tried reading on the Kindle, and it's definitely not the same experience. You're definitely losing out on a lot. Whoever colors those comics, they do a great job.
Definitely.
I guess that transitions onto another really good point, which is how physical books are adapted to become ebooks and how that can either add or take away from an experience. Like, especially, we're all big fantasy readers, like maps become essentially useless on e-readers. If they're like multiple pages, like they don't work well.
No, definitely. And I even noticed that there's a major map that's included like in Stephen King's It, like of the town of Derry. And yeah, it's not a great experience trying to view it on a Kindle whatsoever. So for sure.
Yeah, it's awkward zooming
Yeah, I
in
know.
and like trying to see those details.
Because that's another thing with Kindle is on the e-readers, the touchscreen can be kind of like hit and go. That's why for me, like I love some physical aspect. So like with the Kindle Oasis, you have the physical button that you can push to turn pages. It sounds minor, but that's a major thing for me too.
No, that's leads into a funny story. So like I got my Kindle before I like got back into physical books, and I got a physical book and I tapped the page to turn the page, like in the first chapter. I was tapping the page and I'm like, why is it not turning?
Yeah.
And it took me a second to realize I was looking down, not at a Kindle, but at an actual book.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, but I'm I'm so used to that as well. And that's the thing. If for me with like the baseline Kindles, I don't enjoy them as much because to my understanding, you don't have the physical button. At least with one of the newer ones, you don't. And like I like being able to have like that physical button to know like I turned a page. It sounds pretty minor, but for me, it's kind of like a big thing I've noticed.
It kind of goes hand in hand with the satisfaction of reading. When you read a physical book, you get the feeling of turning a page and then feeling in your hand how many pages you read and how many you have left, that you kind of lose with an e-reader. And so having that button kind of maybe replaces that in some way.
It does for me a little bit. Obviously, it doesn't with the sense that you can see like how much progress you've made, like you can with a physical book. But as far as like, yeah, kind of like mimicking that feeling of like some physical aspect that you have like with the novel, it just doesn't hit the same. That's how I would put it too, I think. But
Yeah, I would love to have the button. The Paperwhite doesn't have a button, but I'm gonna wait until they get color e-ink at Amazon before I upgrade because I really want an Oasis. But it's basically the same thing, but with buttons and a blue light filter
I think that's smart.
for a much higher
I
price
think
point.
that's smart. And I don't know when the next like Kindle Oasis model is expected, but I think this one is nearing like almost 2 years old. So it's probably not far off. I would imagine the next like rendition of it will have some sort of color aspect to it. And I think at that point I would
I really hope so.
maybe sell mine and get a new one too. Just because even though like I don't think I'd read comics on it still, I still want to see like some color, especially with like the cover pages. That's big for me.
Okay, so far, I made a little pro con list. The big pros for e-reader has to be like number one, convenience. I feel like we haven't touched on that enough, but like you carry it everywhere. It's so small. It doesn't take a lot of weight. Doesn't take a lot of space. So you can travel, or if you're moving around a lot, it's not a big thing. And that in general, it's overall a lot cheaper because of ebook sales, where like everything goes 99 cents. Products like Kindle Unlimited, we touched a little bit on Libby and Overdrive through the library system, where you get a lot of free ebooks. And like those are the big pros. And then like for the cons, we've talked about how you kind of lose some of the physicality and sort of traditions and sentimentality of reading an actual physical book. And it's not as pretty. You don't get the pretty books, which I feel like it sounds so like surface level, but I feel like as readers, like we kind of want to show off that we're reading and we're readers. Like, I don't know.
Well, it does. It's a bit surface level, I guess, but again, I think for like it's just part of the experience. Like I think it sounds just from like your opinion, like you're big on like the reading experience too. Like for you, it's a form of like self-care, and you like, and for me, I'd say like it's part of the experience as well. So maybe it's surface level, but I don't know. I think those things matter as well. So it's
Like smelling a book. I did that for the first time since before COVID, and I forgot how great it was. And you can't, what do you do? Can you smell like I don't know, maybe that'll be done the next generation of Kindle.
you probably
Maybe like with the color, there'll be
you
like
probably
the
could.
Scento Master, like smell of books whenever you buy one.
No, you probably could. I don't think I'd recommend it. I don't know if your hands are clean, maybe, but if not, I think I'd probably pass on the smelling of Kindle and e-readers. No, that's definitely a factor. I factored into it, but I have to be honest, that's never been a big thing for me. Is like the smell of books. I understand that's kind of a big thing for some, but that's not something I feel like I lose out on. But I can see the point for sure.
So I want to add something onto that con list. So at least with Amazon and most companies who distribute ebooks, you're not actually buying the book. You're buying a license for the book. And it's not so much an issue with books as it is with movies, but sometimes that license can just be revoked without you knowing. And that's happened to a couple people, but that's also why they get the lower prices because you're not physically owning the book. As if you went down to Barnes and Noble or a local bookshop and picked up the book, then you own that. But on your Kindle or whatever else you use to read books, it's just a license for the .mobi or the .pdf, whatever it is. And if you read the fine print, like I said, it can just be revoked and you don't need a refund.
That's an interesting point, and I've never had the experience, so I don't know. I'd be interested to like hear, is this a common thing with e-readers? Is it something that if you're buying a Kindle you really need to consider, or is it kind of like sort of really rare instances?
So it's not, if it's happened to me, I haven't noticed. It hasn't been a book I've wanted to read, but I was like looking through Reddit and saw a couple of instances, but it doesn't seem to be super common. So I don't think you should be worried about it.
Because e-readers are still such a new thing.
Yeah.
Like what happens when books get older and like the rights transition publishers? Will you still have access to those books or not? And so it's something to worry about in the future.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely something to include on the cons list. Maybe like lower down is like something that's not like super like a super thing you have to consider. I didn't word that great, but yeah.
But it also plays into the pro of it offers you cheaper prices. So double-edged sword.
It is, yeah, it's a give and take there. Which for me, I think I'd rather prefer the lower prices still and just take the risk, you know, whether it's extremely low, which is what it sounds like, but it's still there nonetheless. But I don't know. I like to live on the edge when it comes to those sort of things. So I'll take the lower prices.
Yeah. What I do is I buy the physical books of books I love, like The Lord of the Rings or like The Martian, and then try to get the ebook for everything else or check it out through the library.
Well, this is a point I brought up in the group me, but this again goes to like the collector side of me and the love I still have for physical books. Because if I really enjoy an ebook and it becomes something I love, I end up getting the physical copy, because like part of that reading experience for me is if there's a book I love being able to pass it to a family member, or I'm going into education. Like I love to be able to pass it on to a student or a coworker, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's one of the major advantages of a physical book is you can do something like that versus an e-reader. I mean, you can suggest someone, oh, you need to go read this and download it, but like you can't be the one that like physically lends the book to them, just with the limitations of like an e-reader and it being through like the internet essentially. So like I would put that almost another con as like another pro to physical and con to e-reader.
Certain publishers let you loan your ebooks out to other people.
Okay.
As long as you have their email address. It's like a 21-day loan, almost like checking it out through the library. But it's not every book. I don't think I own any books that I can lend out, but it's an option.
Yeah, and Abby, Jonathan, I don't know if you guys are big on that, but like, are you someone that like when you read a book that you love, like you like lending it off to like
100%.
someone? You are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that like my bookshelf is always half empty because I've lent out books, and it sounds like I feel like I'm so contradictory because I'm like books are things to be prized or whatever, but at the same time, like if I don't get a book back that I've lent out, I'm like, I don't care as long as people are reading it. It's what books are for.
Oh, I don't
like
care
I have
either.
a copy of Neil Gaiman's Stardust that I lent out to a friend at the beginning of the year, and I think it's like circled through 6 people and has yet to make it back to me. And I love that so much. I love like lending out books. I always encourage people to like write notes if they have any, like no spoilers, of course, but like, I don't know. Again, I'm a very sentimental person. That's what we've learned this episode.
Oh, I'm same way. I think it's the Midnight Library in particular. Like I haven't gotten back either, because I think like I usually will pass it to my aunt first, and then I know it just keeps getting passed down the line. But it's kind of like the best feeling ever, because especially if it's a book you love, like you know that other people are experiencing it, and then I know when I meet them, like when I see like my aunt in person or other family members or other friends, like we end up talking about the book. So it's like, again, I think that's something that is more unique to a physical book. I know Jonathan said that you can lend them out for a certain amount of days, but for me, I don't think it would be the same like experience. I'd say that for the most part, it's still pretty unique to physical books for me, which is why I often end up getting the physical book, even if I already own it on e-reader. From that standpoint, and from just like building up a bookshelf that I can display and kind of just have
100%.
so I can grab it at any point.
I love my bookshelf so much. Like my one back home, not the one in my dorm. The one in my dorm is not even a bookshelf. It's a single shelf.
Well, that's more than I have. My bookshelf consists of like me just loading things onto like my nightstand right now at my apartment. I haven't even started on a bookshelf, but I've got my eyes out. But again, that's kind of like the limitations, like especially when you're in a college size apartment. I just don't have much room for
Target
it.
carts, my man.
A bookshelf.
They're like $20 and you can fit, I've got like 3 rows.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into it.
I feel like we've like totally spoken over you, Jonathan, but like, how do you feel about like the whole book lending thing?
Well, I don't have very many friends that like read, and if they do, it's like different books than what I read. But you did unlock a memory from like when I was little. So I had a dinosaur book when I was like in kindergarten or like pre-K. It was my favorite book. It had all the different types of dinosaurs with illustrations, and I lent it to my friend, and he didn't give it back, and then his dog ate it.
His dog ate
So,
it.
like, I haven't let anybody.
Traumatizing
His dog
experience.
destroyed the book, so, and I have never. So I've never lent out a book after that.
Yeah.
But then again, I also don't have many friends who read books like I do.
What happened to me though? Like I lent a book to a friend. It was Soul Surfer, the Bethany Hamilton one where she like got her arm bit off. I lent it to a friend, and like I still have the book. Like half the cover's eaten off by the friend's dog.
Oh my! See, I thought like this was just like a myth that you told. Like my dog ate my homework. I think like dogs actually go after books and textbooks like this. This is
It's got
shocking.
personality now.
I still have that book though because memories. Yes.
It's got some personality.
It matches her. Like half of it's gone, half of her arm's gone. That's a little dark.
Oh, I swear to you, I was gonna say that. The irony that's the book that got eaten in half. Soul Surfer.
Okay, let's each like overall like okay, let's do like a little summary. So far, like everyone loves the experience of reading a physical book, but the convenience of a cost of an e-reader will beat it out every time, except for those like select few books that you're just you're going to come back to again and again, or ones that you want other people to read. And I think it like speaks to the fact that we all at heart love physical books more. Is that's what I'm going to go with. So that my side wins technically.
I'm just gonna sum it up the same way, is that like they both play a role for me. I truly don't have like I don't think a side wins out for me. It's just hard to say because it's very particular to if I'm traveling. I want my e-reader in my hand. I do not want to have to worry about lugging around books. Even when I'm at school, I almost prefer the e-reader too. So I don't know. It's just kind of depends.
Yeah. I mean, I bring my Kindle everywhere with me. It's always in my backpack. And I'm always reading one ebook, one physical book, and one audiobook at the same time. So I think, like Jacob said, they all have their place. And it's all reading at the end of the day. Like, you do you, read.
As long as you're reading.
And having fun doing it.
Absolutely. And I guess maybe audiobooks will be a conversation for another day, but they play their role for me as well. So I think, again, it's all about the reading experience, and you're digesting literature in all these forms. So yeah, it's all personal preference at the end of the day, though, I'd say.
All right. So thanks for joining us today. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at UpAllKnight Book Club, and that's night with a K. And we will see you guys next time for our episode on The One by John Mars.